Hey, good evening, everyone. How are you? It's good to see you. It's good to be seen by you. It's a little dim where I am. Hang on a second. One moment. There we go. That's better. Welcome to Wednesday. Of course, it is Wednesday, and Kyle is here. He will be joining us in just a minute. But I want to give a special shout out and a special thanks, of course, to all of you folks who've subscribed. We've had a lot. We've had a lot in the last couple of days. By the way, I am Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver over there, and my awesome co-host who is joining us all the way from, I guess, Chile, Australia, is, of course, a close personal friend of mine and an absolutely swell guy. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome the one and historically to date only Kyle Schuant that has appeared on the Delver's Dungeon. Kyle, how are you, my friend?
Hey, boys and girls.
It is good to see you, and I hope you are well.
Yes, I'm well. All the commenters are wondering about the modules. I think they're getting impatient, Bill.
Let's see. Are they getting... Hello, Uncle Brat. Hello, Vaughn. Connect. Hello and goodbye, I guess I should say. Wave of Mutilation. Well, let's start on a happy note then. Let's start off on something positive. So the layout for the modules, I firmly believe the Dungeon Masters operate best without fetters, with the ability to spin a creative moment themselves out of the data that they've been given. Let's do this so we can see Kyle's handsome face a little bit better. No, let's go back to this. It's not that handsome. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not a big fan of boxed text. Boxed text is the deadliest wandering monster in a dungeon. So I will leave it. I'm sorry, what?
No box text in mind.
Yes. So I shan't be boxing out the text. You'll get a room description that is yours to embellish as you see fit, oh Dungeon Masters, and then monster stats, which will be few. I am of the G1 school. Monster name, hit points, treasure they may have. You know what an orc is. You know that it is generally armor class 7 and does 1 to 8 points of damage, or by weapon type. So you don't need a...
I don't know if Bill will edit that and change that, but I included a bit more detail on the monsters for two reasons. One is to save people looking things up in play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ideally you have the minimum shuffling around of books and all the rest. And the second is the stats and abilities aren't exactly what's in the monster manual. And that's always the prerogative of the DM and or of the person writing an adventure module to change it a little bit. You know, if they want skeletons to be able to do level drain, even though they've only got 5 hit points or something, then they can have skeletons do level drain, you know. So, yeah. So I put a little bit more detail in, but I didn't go the full, you know, there's something like a half-page average or something per monster in the monster manual. You don't need that.
Right.
But, yeah, I gave, you know, it probably averages like 3 lines or something. 3 lines. I mean, some are pretty simple, like zombie, you know, AC 8, move 6, hit dice 2, hit points 12, attacks 1 to 8. Okay, simple enough. But others are a little bit longer.
Right on. And to be clear, Kyle's doing that. I'm doing a minimalist approach. If you look through, if you have a good collection of first edition AD&D modules and you look through, TSR switched it up over the years. I mean, you know, Gary had a very minimalist style that I tend to follow. Kyle's going with a more If we say that my approach is a little more 1979, Kyle's is a little bit more 1980, 81. But one thing I can assure you that whether he's doing it or I'm doing it, we're not going to drown you in box text, and we're not going to crush you with giant stat blocks. So, as Kyle said, you've got a good idea of how he's doing his. I'm doing mine a little bit more minimally, but the important takeaway from this, regardless of what your approach is that I think you're going to have fun with these modules, and I think you're going to enjoy them. Greetings, Collecting Chaos.
Yeah, well, I mean, in all honesty, I haven't read a module cover to cover since Bill's one a couple of years ago. I've never been a module guy. So while I was writing it up, I just said, okay, what would I like if I were going to run this module? What would I like to know going in to save me the work? You know, like at a convention or something, and somebody hands you the module or hands you a rule book, and you've never run this game before, or you've never run this module before, or you're not familiar enough with the game to just come up with stuff on the spot. What do you need to go with to make this game group of 5 people you've never met before happen and have fun? So that's what I put in.
Just so. So that's our approach, and I hope that answers your question, Vaughn. And anyone else who was wondering about how we're going to be doing that. As far as descriptive text, yours truly, I leave it up to you. I describe the room thus, and then you as the game master can embellish it with whatever details you want, and you don't have to feel like I have to read this entire box of text. I don't feel that's conducive to smooth, continuous gameplay. Come up with your own box text, is what I say. Have your notes ready.
Yeah, the closest I've got is in the intro part, where basically, the old man in the tavern tells them that's where the adventure is, that way.
Yes. And I mean, start or introduction for the players, that's fine. But let's not get into.
But I mean, if the game master wanted to ignore that and they just stumble across the dungeon in the wilderness, that doesn't change a single thing.
And that's a good point too, because like if you start off with a massive chunk of box text as the introduction, and because you're getting your inner Tolkien on as you write the model, not you, Kyle, but one in general. And you've got stuff that just links back to that. You've created a ton of work for the dungeon master who would really just like to have the adventure written out, to fit their own milieu. I mean, I've often said that a good dungeon master can take any module and run it in any setting, but you get into, with all respect to Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, can you run the DL series in Greyhawk? No, not so much.
You certainly can't run it in Dark Sun.
No. You can't run it in Dark Sun. But you can absolutely run Tomb of Horrors in Dark Sun.
Chaos says, I spent nearly 2 months back in the late 70s working on a module to run for my players. I kept putting it where they would run into it, and they consistently went the wrong direction.
That's when you have to invent the terrible wandering dungeon entrance. You fall into a pit, you wake up here.
Yeah, but they walk away from it. I think when I was 15, I actually got my player, I teleported him into the dungeon. I was so sick of it. I don't know how I rationalized it, but...
So once upon a time, a friend of mine was running us through Temple of Elemental Evil, and he was a fan of AD&D, but he was also a fan of Basic and Expert and would mine Basic and Expert modules. So the pieces of Yellow Skull, which if you're not familiar with it, Kyle, Yellow Skull is a golden skull that you you can use it to banish the big bad in Temple of Elemental Evil and so on. Rather than just have that scattered in different levels of the temple and it just be kind of a dull dungeon crawl, he scattered it across Greyhawk, and where one of the pieces was located was on a tropical island, and so he used Isle of Dread for that, which I thought was really cool, because, for a couple of months, we played Isle of Dread, full well knowing we were going to go back to the Temple of Elemental Evil, once we got the rest of the pieces. But in that same campaign, he used Journey to the Rock. And we talk about railroads. We complain about railroads. Journey to the Rock says to the game master, if the players won't do this, have a giant bird swoop down and pick them up, horses and all, and fly them to where the adventure is and put them down. And we didn't take the bait. We did not take the bait. It's like, you see, a mountain looming in the distance. I was like, we should find a local village and see if there's any stories about that. And failing that, I feel like we should probably journey back to the city of Greyhawk and get, nope. Swoops down, picks us up, flies us there, sets us down. LHRPG, thank you for the super. LHRPG asks, how accurate is Yawning Portal to the OG modules? Now, I have only glanced through Yawning Portal to rub my chin and go, yes, that's the Giants series. Yes, that's Tomb of Horrors. Yes, that's White Plume Mountain. I think in the 10,000 foot view, they are tacitly accurate to it. Like, you're going to find Satenmir the vampire in White Plume Mountain. Okay. You're going to have to cross the boiling mud to get to him in White Plume Mountain. You're going to find a Cesarak, the Demi-Lich, at the end of the Tomb of Horrors portion. You're going to fight Nosnra in the Great Feast Hall in the G1 portion of it. How those are statted, particularly something as nasty as Tomb of Horrors, for the how can I put this delicately, less sanguine players of 5e, when you've got stuff like, if they touch this gem, it explodes. It literally creates a small nuclear explosion and all their characters die. No saving throw. They're dead. How they may have adjusted it for that, I could honestly not tell you. So in that respect, I don't know. Hello, Jorge. Good to see you. One thing I wanted to mention before I forgot this, Kyle, because I know, because we started late tonight, and that's my fault. I had some things that I had to take care of. And I know you and I won't have much time to speak after, because lunch and all for you. But Kyle, we are up 40 subscribers since this time last week. 40 subscribers, which is good numbers for us, I think. So if you've just subscribed, welcome. And if you're wondering what's going on down at the bottom of the screen there, if you'd like to support the channel, and this ties back into what Kyle and I were answering questions about modules. If you'd like to support the channel for as little as $1 a month on Patreon or $2 a month on YouTube, you can either become a YouTube member or you can become a patron. At the $10 level on YouTube or on Patreon, every month you will receive, written by myself or by Kyle coming up in September, a first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons short form module, short form adventure to play. You can fit it in your campaign if you do Greyhawk, if you do Forgotten Realms, if you do Dragonlance. I can't help you with Dark Sun or Planescape. I'm sorry. But it will fit broadly into most D&D campaigns.
It's a lot cheaper than other hobbies. So my not local game store, but one in the city where I plan to do some open game tables soon. They recently had up on their page about getting yourself into Magic the Gathering, the card game. This is not to diss them. I mean, that's the card game is what it is, and the store has to make money and all the rest. But just in terms of hobbies, role-playing games are a much cheaper hobby than card games.
Yeah.
We got looking at getting into MTG Modern, but haven't found the right time or price. Well, good news. We've created some modern deck cores with all the fundamentals for 2 of Modern staple decks, and we've got them at a huge discount. Come into plenty of games, get your hands on a great steal. So Mercantile Core, originally $1,058, now $720. Hammer Time, retail $1,060, on sale $720. So that's role-playing games are so much cheaper.
Yes, and I mean, $10 a month, and you get a mini module. And by mini, I don't mean it's like tiny. First of all, it's a PDF. You can make it as large type as you want. I did just a shorter form. You're not going to get like the 60 some rooms of G1 or something like that. It'll be like, hey, we can finish this up in a couple of nights. We're traveling from Verbabonk to Divers. We're going from the city of Greyhawk to Hardby, whatever. Here's something that you encounter along the way, something to populate your hex with, if you will. And I think we all like to populate our hex every now and again, if you know what I'm talking about. I like that stat, Vaughn. Yeah, that's the kind of stat block. Like that is the biggest stat block that I like to put in a module. On occasions that I've had to write 5e or 3.5e, I literally begged my editors, could you not just have your person that you have to do this stat this stuff up? Look, he's an undead knight. He's got a sword that drains souls. He's got 45 hit point. He's armor class -2, which he's -2.
The game designer equivalent of the dish hand in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There's the guy who washes the dishes and mops the floor, and there's the guy who just writes up the stat blocks.
Yeah. I'm just the line cook. I leave it to the Sue to make sure the plate is pretty. Okay, I'm not worried about that. But yeah, so and one thing I will say with the monthly adventures, which again, that's at the $10 backer level on YouTube or on Patreon, is that length is going to vary month to month. I'm never going to be like, here's a piece of AI clip art on one half of the page, and here's the adventure on the other half of the page. That's $10. But I mean,
hey,
you make it. Hey, quiet you! You're not supposed to tell them that. But no, it's you may get something that you're like, holy crap! If I printed this out, this would be like 12 pages. And then some months you may be, hey, well, this is 4 pages. I'm late to do this, but I'm going to send a template to Kyle because I like the old school module formatting, the 2 3.5-inch columns with a half-inch gutter, half-inch separation, and half-inch top, bottom, and right margin. If Kyle has a clip art way to get art in there, he can format it appropriately. So that's what you're getting basically. And if you follow me on social media, on Twitter, _Dungeon Delver. If any of you ever print these out, which some people have, back in the early 2000s, before it was commonly I can just go out and get something bound and then send you a picture of it. I did have a few people come back and tell me, yeah, I got your free module printed at Kinko's. and had it at a con, and people were like, I've never seen that AD&D module before. And that was super flattering to hear that. So if you do something like that to Kyle's module or my module, let us know, because I want to see it.
This is too few pages to even need a side bind. I've just stapled it.
There you go. Well, and Kyle's already done his.
Yeah, I printed it out just before this thing because people were talking about modules before the comments. So the teaser is the Black Mountain Delve, an Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition adventure for brave first or careless third level characters. I think that's important guidelines. I mean, I think that's why the traditional modules had that range of levels.
Oh, I think it's tremendously important guideline.
Because fourth to seventh, like fourth if you're really smart and lucky, seventh if you're a typical player. Introduction. Generations ago, the old man tells the party in the tavern, a vile necromancer dwelt up in the hills along a cliff face trail, up in the Black Mountain. Many dark and evil magics did he make in his labyrinth of suffering, seeking to live forever. And he made men his slaves even after death. In time, he passed on into the silence of the void, and only a few of us old folk remember the stories. Probably by now, few of his foul creations remain, and other monstrous beings have taken up there. But there will be treasures still, and the greatest of all, the Librum of the Black Mage himself. But we do not speak his true name. So, and then they go up into the mountains and all get killed. Yeah. That's the cheesy intro.
That's a cheesy
Everything is better with cheese. Remember that.
Absolutely. Puffed pieces of corn, cheese. A good sandwich, cheese. Unless it's peanut butter and jelly. Pizza, cheese. A burger, cheese. Anything. And there's the music you should be listening to.
We were doing that the other day. My son made dinner. He does that on Monday nights, and he just made like sandwich type wraps, and he was grating up some cheese, and you get the cheese in the big blocks, and he's grating it up on the grater, and then after he grated the cheese, he said, "Oh, the end isn't neat now, so I have to cut it, and I have to eat that little chunk of cheese." So everything's better with more cheese. That was his pre-dinner snack.
Yeah, when I make basically, I'm trying to think of the term, what it is. I haven't done this in a while. I should probably bruschetta. That's it. I'll make a baked bruschetta, tomato slices and mozzarella cheese, olive oil, and bread, all that good stuff. I'll usually wind up with a little more mozzarella or whatever, piece about that big, and I'll cut that up and take that out on a plate to the family. And amuse bouche while dinner prepares, and fall on that like ravenous wolves. But Kyle was talking about levels. I think. If I can get this down without killing myself, that'll be awesome. Actually, is it in Dungeons of Dread? I don't.
While you look for that, I'll include the note. Some pictures appear in the text, which should be displayed to players at the right time to fill them with a right and proper sense of dread and appreciation for the lack of originality of the writer.
You're
I've
probably
told you guys before. I just plagiarize everything, and
yeah, you're probably not going to get that an illustration booklet out of me, but I'm trying to think. Is it in here? Is it in the players? One of my favorite D&D modules, basically, and I think it's Lost Caverns of Sojkant. You guys can check me out on this. I was just seeing if it was readily available in the introduction there. Basically, it straight up says, if the players want to be foolish, death will readily find them. If they want to rush headlong in and die, this is absolutely the place for them to do it. Gary was pretty on point about that. Speaking of Gygaxes, I do want to mention this. I mentioned this over on Twitter. I mentioned it on social media because we've kind of been talking about this the last couple of days. Ernie Gygax, Gary's oldest son, he's actually Gary Gygax Jr., Ernest Gary Gygax, and Ernest Gary Gygax Jr. But Ernie, as we know him, had a cardiac event late last week. I think it may have been over the weekend, and it really knocked him for a loop. He has had they went in and did a procedure to basically get his heart out of arrest, essentially. It was not doing what it was supposed to be doing, and they went in there and they zappoed it, however they do that, and so he is doing much better. That is from his fiancee Donna. It has been shared around the interwebs, and of course we all wish the best for Ernie. Good news for Ernie. Yes, we do. We absolutely do. A picture of Rosie O'Donnell is something Lacey. Oh, yuck. Oh, straight to jail. Straight to jail for you. Yeah. Playing the X card. You can't do that. You can't do that. I'm not going to let you. How awful. What did we do to you? What, I ask you, Steel Mongoose, did we do to you? No bueno, indeed. But, you know, I had a funny one, and I want to be clear to whoever had said this. I'm not calling you out, and I'm not naming this person by name, but I saw this, and this was funny because it's true, and I'm absolutely not. It kind of falls under the column of "Ain't it funny how time slips away." There was a YouTube channel I was watching, and someone left a comment and said, "Well, I'm not going to worry about 5e. I'm just going to, me and my fellow grognards are going to play 3.5e. Me and my fellow grognard 3.5 edition laughs in first edition AD&D." And to the person's good humor, they came back and said, "Hey, all but one of our players started with 1e. We just happen to like 3.5 the best." And I said, I love having a little bit of positive interaction with people in YouTube comments when they're not mine. And I said, "Hey," or no, but his end comment was, "What, did you teach Gary Gygax how to play D&D?" And I said, "No, but I have played D&D with Gary Gygax a little bit." But no, it was good natured, But the reality is, we're gonna hit a point soon where you're going to meet players, whether you're introducing them to AD&D. And I know, Kyle, you're talking about going down to your FLGS and doing game days, right? Yeah. You're going to have to gird your loins, my friend, because you're going to meet people there, and they may be enthusiastic about playing AD&D, and I hope they are, but they're going to straight up say, "Yeah, I started way back with an old edition, 4th." And just that's nice.
Well, no, because when did 5th edition come out?
2014.
So we're talking about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Most of the players of role-playing games in that particular store are in their 20s. Given that most players start in their teens or 20s, most of them will have started with 5th edition.
Wow, you're right. You're absolutely right. They're "Hey mom, can you help us make a tent in the basement, playing D&D all Friday night into early Saturday morning, sort of Stranger Things experience will be with 5th edition." So yeah. They're not even,
it seems to be. I mean, I could be wrong, but they seem to be coming to it a bit later because, as I've said before, it's a bit like going into this world, the barbell world. Starting strength is all. This is the method. This is the way you must do it. It's fairly old school. And then CrossFit came along, and all of a sudden people are using really sloppy form and stuff like that. But a hell of a lot more people have got their hands on a barbell.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Ripto of Starting Strength said, our argument with CrossFit is a family argument. In the end, they're still family. In the end, we still all want the same thing. We want to improve people's lives with physical training. I think it's much the same with role-playing games, and certainly with editions of D&D. In the end, what we want is everyone to sit down around the table and roll the dice and eat some snacks and talk nonsense and have some fun. That's what we all want. So what I can give 5th edition credit for, just as CrossFit made barbells really popular in a way that nobody else had done before, 5th edition has made D&D popular in a way that didn't happen since 1st edition. Not since the early 80s has it been like that, because they did a very good thing with their Adventurers League. It seems to have faded off now, but they did, with their Adventurers League, they did what it seemed to me would TSR hoped to do with the Role Playing Game Association back in the 80s, of getting gamers together from lots of different places and introducing people to gaming. So that they've been quite effective in that. So my impression is a lot just come into it in their 20s, when they're going, or late teens, early 20s, when they're going to university and they come across the clubs and the social media. Then through their teens, they go on the social media of, they're just following the hot chicks on social media or something. But then once they get into their 20s, they start pursuing other interests on their social media, or whatever their chosen hobby is. And there's a lot of role-playing game adjacent hobbies out there, like computer games and sci-fi and fantasy reading and all that sort of stuff. And they gradually drift into that. So whenever I've seen game groups, they're mostly people in their 20s. So they probably started with 5th edition.
Right on. And I mean, it's however you come in, I'm not like Pope William Sylvie the first, where I'm pointing over saying, they have to crawl in through that small door if they want to come to the Holy Church of First Edition. However people come in, I'm fine with. And I've said before, you strip away the dross, the things that I have gotten, I've done videos about, and I've gotten up on my grog horse about. At its core, 5e is not a bad D&D. It's a little simplistic with its 1 XP chart, but it's actually got some interesting quirks. So I say this with love to my fellow 1E fans. If somebody says to you, my first D&D was 5e, I want to check this out, don't start off with an anti-5e polemic. Do that after they say they love first edition and they really want to get into it.
Yeah, well, like when you go to the barbers and you say, I need a haircut, they don't start by saying, yeah, man, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're right. They would be right if they did, but because that's why you're there. But, they're there. So you accept them.
I insert name here says 5e has good bones, and I don't disagree with that at all. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I can make 3 or 4 tweaks and run anyone a game of 5e that is enjoyable to them as 5e players and enjoyable as me as a DM of 1e to run. And I can explain the changes I made in a way that I think they're absolutely going to agree with and enjoy. Again, I mean, none of us were born. We didn't leap forth from Gygax's forehead with a set of 1E books in our hands and a full understanding of how initiative and surprise work. Okay, none of us were. We all had our first D&D, and I mean, I've told this story before, and I love telling this story. My first D&D was a copy of Keep on the Borderlands. You know, I didn't know any better from all the wrong things that I did. And if someone who played first edition AD&D had gotten in my teeth and said, you know, you stupid kid, that's not how that works. What is wrong with you? Don't you know about initiative and surprise? Don't you know about variable weapon damage? What is this? You know, the player hits a monster and it dies, or if the monster hits a player, they lose 1 hit point. What is that garbage? What's wrong with? I mean, I would have cried and quit playing, and I wouldn't be here now. All right, Kyle would be doing a live stream about weightlifting or something. I don't know, but
I might be ranting about role playing games all by myself. Then you'd be fucked.
That's right. Hey, you guys think I'm bad? If the substitute ran the class all year. But no, just give people time. Give people time. As long as they're willing to give you time. I mean, if the first word's out of their mouths, remember, this is a two-way street. You know, if they come at you with isms and phobes and all that, it's clear they don't want to play D&D.
As I said, look, maybe it's the neighborhood, maybe I haven't encountered this problem. I haven't, you know, people talk about everyone's precious about their character being killed and blah blah blah. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it at all. People have been, you know, pretty accepting of it all. They haven't all stayed for years on end at the game table, but they came along for a few sessions or several sessions and had fun. And some of them did stay for years at the game table. I haven't found this where it's like, you killed my character and, you know, you've triggered me with this and that. I just haven't found that. I think that's mostly an internet phenomenon. Yeah.
BNGs.
Think, you know, most people, like, as I've said before, you know, it's my friend Aaron described it well as a social way to be creative with friends in role playing, and people who aren't your friends but might be given time. They, in most social situations, people adjust their behavior to others. You know, we've all been in that situation where you're at a dinner party or at a party or something like that, and you spontaneously crack a joke, and then there's a little moment of silence. You just said the wrong thing. You shouldn't have made that particular kind of joke in that particular place at that time. And as soon as you said it, you realize, I shouldn't have said that. There's a little moment of silence. And then in that group of people, a couple of them then start talking to each other, and another couple start talking to each other. And eventually somebody talks to you again. You go on and you don't make that kind of joke again.
Right.
And those of us, people who are a little bit more socially clued in, are less likely to do that. They'll sense what is the right time. And those of us who are less socially clued in will just spurt it out. But we'll figure it out eventually, and we'll adjust our behavior a little bit. People do that in game groups. You know, the game master becomes more or less grognard or whatever to suit the group, and the players become more or less first or fifth edition or GURPS or whatever to suit the group. People adjust a little bit to each other. So there's going to be give and take. You know, you don't need... I heard of a game group where somebody actually the GM actually offered a formal social contract, like it was a written social contract. I don't think he understood that the essence in sociology of the social contract is that it's unwritten. You know, it's things that everybody understands that you just don't do even though you can, but you just don't do them. Yeah, there's no law. There's no law against picking your nose and eating it in public, but people just don't do it. Not if they want to have friends. That's made my nose itchy too. Anyway, so moral of the story is just sit down, have an open game table, sit down, go for it. People will join in and enjoy it. There won't be all these obstacles that you would expect to get when you're reading horror stories on the internet.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And Kyle, you invented such a great term for that, the bitter non-gamer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we have that phenomena. You have to accept the good with the bad, right? I mean, you know, you enjoy a delicious piece of cake, but you're probably taking a couple of weeks off your life eating it, right? You know, you know, you can go out and party. You can take the family on a driving vacation and just say, screw the house payment and the car payment this month. We're going to have fun. But then somebody's going to, you know, you're going to get nasty letters from money collectors. And then you got to scramble to make things work. And I think we've gotten, I saw this came up. It's been popping up a little bit this week, and I've seen it. It's because it's been quoted at me. Let me be 100% clear, Kyle. I haven't gone looking for this stuff. It just finds me. You know, you click on one article because you think it's going to be fun, and then Twitter, I'm sorry, X, is like, oh, then you're going to want to see all of this. And I'm like, no, God, so apparently people are freaking out and having babies over Baldur's Gate 3 for many different reasons. But one of them is because your characters can die and there's not a real DM for you to beg to not kill off your character or to con into letting you have an extra death save.
Oh, you can't go back to your save game?
Well, I don't know. I haven't played the game, and I don't know if I'm going to play the game. I think if I do, Vaughn's probably going to mail me a squirrel stapled to a postcard. But I'm kidding you, Vaughn. I'm kidding. You're awesome, dude. You're awesome. No, there's a I guess they're saying, I guess it works like that, but people are just like in a tizzy because, and we were talking about we were talking about the bones of 5e being good. Now, I said this about the gold box games, the first official Advanced Dungeons and no, not the first official Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game, but the first rules-bound AD&D game, because the first official Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game was called Treasure of Taruman, and it came out on the Intellivision, but that was just licensed. That was just licensed. But the DM in Pool of Radiance is brutal. Absolutely, you failed your save, you die, and it's the same thing. You can't just say, oh, please, can we say the poison was weak because it had been there for a long time? Please. I really like it's not going to do it. The computer games don't care. They will absolutely murder your character without blinking. And people...
I've been playing State of Decay recently, and that's very true of that game. There's no save games either.
Yeah.
Your favorite, because you have a little community of survivors in the zombie apocalypse, and if your favorite one dies, they die. That's it, and you go back. Like I had at one stage, I'd got down to one survivor, and so when you have the thing where you look at the community as a whole, and you can slot from one to the other and see what their stats are and everything. And she was just standing there, and there were a bunch of gravestones behind her to mark the deceased of the past.
Yeah.
my little community, and it was funny because they have random traits, like used to be a school teacher or slump shouldered, so they don't have as much encumbrance and that sort of thing. And her trait was exile. She'd been kicked out of her last community and was desperately hoping she wouldn't be kicked out of this one. And I thought, well, you're the only one left. So
I finally found a community I could work with. It's abandoned.
but
no.
like there's no save game. You go out and fight the zombies, and they surround you, and you try to hack your way through, and you hack the one in front of you, and you try to move forward, but then another couple slot in front of you, and you're like, and your health is going down, and you can like take the painkillers to drop your health, but in order to do that, you have to sort of move the keys right, and you have to like sacrifice a few of your blows to do it, and you can't take the potion of health quickly enough, and you perish horribly, and that's it. Your character's gone. At most, one of your surviving characters, if any, can come and get their gear later.
Yeah. But no, it's the games can be lethal, and you would think these people, and this goes back a few years ago. There was this movement. No Super Troopers in AD&D, exactly, Vaughn. There was this movement. People were asking for, like, I want to enjoy, and this started out with Doom, the 2016 version of Doom, which I cannot believe is 7 years old now. I still think of it as the new Doom, like the newfangled Doom that's 7 years old. But journalists were in a tizzy because it's a hard game. I want to enjoy the scenery and the lore, the bits of lore you find. Can you not make can you not make like an easy mode where the tough fights you just click through? And I'm just like, until it was like a couple of years after I got my first IBM compatible PC and played Doom till I knew there were cheat codes. So yeah, facing monsters and dying over and over again, save scum or get good.
Well, I mean, most games have difficulty levels. They've got difficulty levels so that, if you want to more kind of exploring story-oriented, so to speak, experience, you can have that. Most games have that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But two, I mean, I think there's kind of an attitude. You can, like, if you sit there playing a computer game for 6 hours straight and then your character dies, you crack the shits and you need a break from the game a bit. You storm out.
Yeah,
like in the role-playing game session where this player Tom, his character, he didn't even die. He just he thought he was going to hit, and then he didn't because of this bizarre Gertrude. And he got up and he stormed out of the game session, but then he came back because it was his house. I think he was so angry he'd forgotten that.
That's funny.
But anyway, yeah, sometimes you need a break from that game. 6 hours straight playing is probably a bad idea. But most will have difficulty levels, and within or without difficulty levels, there's the simple fact of just learning how it goes. And in the State of Decay, I find just random sudden death doesn't tend to happen very much at all. Like, you can see the hordes of zombies running around, and there are bigger zombies called juggernauts. They're built like some Iowa farm boy in his overalls, and they go "Rrr," and they stomp on the ground, and then they charge at you. But they just charge in a straight line. So if you're a safe distance from them, you can just step aside, and he runs past you. If you're in a car, you'll flip it. But anyway, you're not injured if you're inside the car. And the smaller zombies can pull you out though. But anyway, the point is, the times when my characters have got killed are times when I knew it was dangerous and I decided to take the risk anyway. Or times when I was being imprudent. I was impatient. I'm not going to walk all the way to this thing. I'm just going to sprint. And because I sprinted, all these zombies went, what's that? And started chasing after me. So as well as the any zombies at the destination, there were a couple of hordes coming after me at once. So basically, most of the times that I died, it was my fault, really. If I'd just been a bit more patient and prudent, I would have been fine. It would have taken a lot longer, but I would have been fine. So really, It's just like D&D, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's just like D&D. D&D is a bit more brutal with its random death, save versus this and that. But
it is
like most computer games, there's, unless they're a total grind fest or some stupid platformer or something, it's just a matter of being prudent and sensible. There's a way to do it, like Fallout 4 or something like that. There are different difficulty levels, but each challenge you've got, there's a way to approach it. And if you fail, when you look back on it, you say, oh, I charged in, I didn't properly scout out and figure out what was going on. You know, like one of the first little missions you get in Fallout 4 is you're going against this little raider base, and one of the enemy has a minigun. But that minigun, unless you're really unlucky and they take you out in that first burst, you hear this. You should sensibly go, oh shit, and then pull back and see if you've got something else that you can bring to bear against this particular problem, like, you know, a grenade to chuck around the corner or something. I don't know, but
yeah, and you know, Gary had it right, and I apologize if this bruises the sensibilities of anyone, but Gary had it right. Avoid unnecessary encounters.
Yeah.
Use your head.
Yeah. There's some at the end of my module. I've got some advice that's sort of congruent to that. Further adventures and general considerations. A read through of this module will make it clear that only the luckiest and most prudent low-level characters would make it through in one run. If nothing else, they would be unable to carry all the treasure. The party ought to set up camp in the mountains nearby and make several separate delves into the dungeon. They will certainly benefit from a competent thief, men-at-arms, and so on. Of course, a lower level party will not need to clear out the entire dungeon in order to advance a level or two. And then there's another note, but that's relevant to the dungeon itself, so no spoilers. But I think one thing that games like Command and Conquer and a lot of computer games have sort of taught players is the completionist thing. I've got to kill every last orc on the map. I've got to find every last speck of treasure. But in AD&D, you don't have to do that. I've got enough treasure to level up. Why am I still here? It's time to go back to town and level up.
Yeah.
Because I can't gain any more XP. I can gain more treasure, but that treasure will not become experience points.
Right. If you've got the XP to level and you've got the treasure to level, it's time to go. It's time to head back.
Now, it may be that there's this big bad evil guy that you've got to take out to save the village or whatever. And so then you would continue fighting on. That's fair enough. You can't say, sorry, guys, I'm just going to leave you to it. We've got to go back and level up. We'll be back in 6 weeks. You know, that's a bit rough. But if it's simply a traditional go adventuring, accumulate treasure, gain levels, gain renown, and all the rest, if there isn't a particular goal. But I mean, that's what the advice was too. Avoid unnecessary encounters, keep your eye on the goal. Sometimes the goal will be that big bad evil guy who's about to wipe out the village, and you might just poke the hornet's nest. So even though you have capped out your experience points and everything, you've got to keep going. because you've poked the hornet's nest, and you're going to leave them in the crap if you leave now.
Mhm.
So there might be circumstances like that, and there's a zillion little modules like that as well. But if it's simply the traditional dungeon delve, where you're just killing things and taking their stuff, they'll wait. Those zombies and skeletons and stuff, and they're not going anywhere. They're staying in the dungeon.
Exactly. So
The absolute worst thing that's going to happen is that you come back, and because you cleared out half the dungeon, an Umber Hulk is now living in that half. So, this is a nice place to live. I'll stay here, I think.
well, we've been playing Keep on the Borderlands on Tuesday nights, and by the way, don't think Mr. Kyle Schuant, Mr. Viking Hat Game Master, that you're off the hook to run stuff on Wednesday night, because people have been asking. They're like, when is Kyle going to run something again? And I'm like, I gotta. He comes to the meetings. I don't know what to tell you. But so yeah,
I've been reading a traveler book. He doesn't say it is, but it is.
There you go.
I'll tell you about this in a second.
Excellent. But we've been playing Keep on the Borderlands live. That is Tuesday evenings. We start at 9, we finish at 11 Eastern Standard Time. If you've never seen this classic Dungeons and Dragons module played out and listened to, and occasionally with a little bit of help from some Dwarven Forge out on the table, seen the module played out, I highly recommend you stop by on Tuesday nights and give it a spin, because it's good fun. But Gary notes straight up that they won't get the monsters won't be reinforced. They won't get reinforcements, and I think that's largely because it is a beginning module. It's like, hey, we killed 18 kobolds, and only one man at arms was knocked unconscious, and everybody else is nicked up. We go back to the keep. We come back in 2 weeks. The kobolds have sent letters to their cousins or whatever, and we just because then it becomes an unending grind fest. Then it's a matter of, well, we just got to stay in the dungeon until we kill them all, and then hope that we created so much carnage that no more monsters come back, or we die, or we die. And I do kind of like it that Gary says straight up, the monsters won't get reinforced. The only exception of this is there's 2 orc tribes that live up in the upper left corner, if you're looking at the map for Keep on the Borderlands, and the survivors from your raid on one will team up with the other. And I think it's a training tool, not just for players, but for Dungeon Master to say, hey, you can have monsters cooperating in your dungeons. So I think it's incumbent, if you've got a low level module, particularly if it's something as classic as Keep on the Borderlands, to kind of adhere to that. Don't quite have the monsters moving in straight away. You can still have wandering monster encounters if your party's like, well, let's go look in there again. Maybe we missed a secret door or something. I think you can still have a wandering monster encounter, but don't throw an 8+8 hit die monster that can shoot confusion beams out of its eyes at them. The Umber Hulk.
Well,
hey, we're all third level.
Why not?
We're all 3rd level except for Bob, our magic user. He's 2nd level, but we should be able to survive. Oh, what is that thing? Pinch, and then your character's dead. So what do you got there, Kyle?
Okay, so this is a traveler book, traveler role-playing game book. It's not officially, that's not what it says on the label, but this is what it is. It's called Quarter Share. And the blurb at the back says, what if we sent freighters instead of frigates? In a universe run by corporations where profit matters more than life, how can an orphan with no skills, no money, and no prospects survive? When Ishmael Wang's mother dies in a senseless accident, he's given a choice. Leave the planet on his own, or the company will remove him. To avoid deportation, Ishmael joins the crew on an interstellar freighter. Find out what Ishmael must do to earn his quarter share. In other words, he's 18 years old, and he doesn't have any skills yet. He's just rolled up his 6 stats of strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, and social. He doesn't yet have any skills whatsoever. So how do you live? Well, we're going to role play. We're going to role play that out. But there's so they start him out as a student. So the quarter share, and that refers to each of the crew receive a share of the profits of the trip. Right, a certain amount goes to the company, and a certain amount goes to maintenance of the ship and stuff, and a certain amount goes to shares. So there's a quarter share, a half share, a full share, a double share, and so on. In fact, that's the sequels to the book. Quarter share, half share, full share, double share, captain's share, owner's share. So we can see where the character is going eventually. So anyone can just enter at quarter share. That's no skills. They'll just teach you on the job what you need to do. And he starts off as a steward making coffee. And he comes in and he's a bit of a smart ass and he says, oh, this coffee is really awful. And the cook says, how would you make it better? How about you make it better? Go for it. So he takes the coffee urn and he scrubs it out and cleans it out and everything. And it turns out that his mother was a bit of a coffee snob. So that's how he knows how to, if you just clean the urn and you roast it in this particular way instead of burning it, it ends up tasting better. And so he makes a name for himself that way. And the cook starts saying, well, okay, what half share position do you think you'll go for in the future? And he's like, I've only been here 10 days and my steward mate Pip's been here a year and a half. Why are you talking to me like this? And he said, well, you found a problem. You found a solution when you didn't know the answers. You asked for them. You asked for help. And you approached it systematically and you repaired the problem. And you improved the quality of life on this ship by giving everyone better coffee. So, in other words, the guy's got high intelligence and education. So he has a bonus to roll for his promotion. That's the game master speaking to the player.
I love it.
Now, here's a little bit. So at no point, I've had a look at the author's blog, and I've looked through the blurbs of the book and everything. There's no mention of Traveller, but I know he's a gamer. I said all this before.
Oh, this is this guy is transcribing his Traveller game. I don't. He may try and pull it off, but
well, his mindset is a gamer anyway. So there's the handbook is so it's a book within this that just describes how the merchant services run and everything. It took me about a week of evenings to make it through the various specialties. So anyone can do a quarter share, but to be eligible for a half share position, you've got to do exams and likewise full, double, and so on shares. I didn't want to leave the ship, but I discovered some interesting things about ratings and slots. For example, you could take any job listed at your rating or lower. I didn't know how that played out in practice, but I could see where in a pinch, you might want to take an ordinary spacer slot in order to get off planet where an able spacer berth wasn't available. Some ideas were self-evident. The more ratings you had, the more possibilities for employment. Despite that, most people specialized in one area and concentrated their efforts to get the largest share ranking possible in that division. That piqued my interest, and I ran some questions by Pip, this is his friend, the other steward, the day before we hit the jump point. It's also a jump. He doesn't capitalize the J, though, but it's still a jump point, so it's Traveller.
It is true.
Why do people work up through a specialty, I asked. Why not? The higher you go, the better the pay. Well, yes and no. Within some narrow range, your pay is largely determined by your share and not by your specialty, right? Because they get standard pay and then the share on top. We were swabbing down the mess tables and he stopped to look at me. Sorta. Your salary goes up based on rank, even after your share maxes out. The difference in base pay between Able Spacer and Spec 1 is pretty large, but they're both full share berths. Okay, but the key to earning is being on a ship, isn't it? We had finished with the tables and moved on to sweeping the floor. I'm not following where you're going with this, Ish. The character's name is Ishmael. Suppose something happens here and I get put ashore. As a quarter share, I don't have much to draw on for a new berth. I'm with you so far. Pip rinsed out his rag in a bucket and nodded for me to go on. Now, if I qualify as a half share in, say, cargo, then my options begin to open up. I'm eligible to take any quarter share berth that comes along or a half share cargo slot. But why would you want to do that, he asked. Take the quarter share berth, I mean. Well, maybe the next ship in port doesn't have a cargo slot open. It would be a cut in pay for me to take the quarter share, but it's still more than I'd make planetside, earning nothing and paying for everything. True enough. Now, what if I qualify as a half share in cargo and engineering, or cargo and deck? Why wouldn't you go for a full share in cargo, he asked. Well, this is where the real mini-maxing comes in. Well, the qualifying exam for full share is roughly twice as hard as for half share, isn't it? Pip considered this and shrugged to grant me the point. Yeah, I suppose that's one perspective. So, for the same amount of effort for full share cargo, I could get 2 half share ratings in other divisions. And if my goal is the best possible chance of staying employed, wouldn't it make sense to get a second and third half share rating in order to diversify my options? He stopped dead in his tracks and stared at me, his head tilted a little sideways. That's an odd way to look at it. Yeah, but play the game with me. Take the long view. Where are the most jobs? Full share berths are the most common. So if I want to be guaranteed as much as possible that under any given circumstances I can get a position on the next ship, what do I need to have? His response came instantly. A full share rating in a division. You can take any lower position and the majority of them are full share to begin with. Close. What I really need is a full share rating in every division. Goldilocks and all 3 bears, man. That would take forever. Not as long as you think. A university degree can take 4 or 5 Stan years. Advanced degrees even longer. True. It's much better from an economic standpoint to be out in the deep dark. When I'm planetside, I'm burning creds. So long as I have a berth, I'm making money. So what I need is the ability to maximize my time on board, and that means being able to take whatever job is open as soon as I need one. Most are full share, and while a lot of those are specialized, my best bet would be getting rated in every division.
This is Brett and Parker from Alien. This is Brett and Parker from Alien. Yeah, about the bonus situation.
Yeah. This is the player speaking to the game master and pointing out, well, if you follow the rules, what I need to maximize my chances, maximize character's income.
So this guy is either a fan of Traveler or of Alien or both. Because
yeah,
again,
he's a gamer. I don't know about Alien, but he's a gamer. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, of course he's a fan of AI. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if this guy was not a fan of Alien. Because again, this is Brett and Parker talking about the bonus situation before things go south in Alien. It absolutely is, and I'm right. Okay, I'm right.
Well, yeah, I don't foresee that aliens are going to come crawling out of the walls in this.
Right, but you know, I remember there's a line I thought it was pretty funny as a kid in the book of 2010 when they find the Discovery doing its very slow tumble in orbit around Io, and they dock up with it and they send Kurnow and the Russian, Max was his first name. Kurnow and Max go over there. When they open the hatch and go in, Floyd says over the comms to Kurnow, "Don't go looking for the ship's cat." And the Russians just kind of look at him, and Kurnow comes back on the radio and goes, "Whose idea was it to put that film in the ship's library?" They're of course referring to Alien, which this is 2010, so Alien, obviously Alien exists in the universe of 2001: A Space Odyssey in 2010. So it's not that old of a movie. And if you figure astronauts
there was that Twilight Zone movie. Remember, like back in the early 80s, they made a movie, Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Vignettes in it. Yeah, and there's one where John Lithgow sees a demon crawling around on the wing of the aircraft.
The thing on the wing, yeah, it's terror. It's terror at 30,000 feet is the name of the vignette.
That's the name of the track. Yeah. Well, so when I was a kid, my mum had this Argentinian boyfriend, and we were on like the first direct flight from Melbourne or Sydney or something to Buenos Aires after the Falklands War. It must have been 83 or 84 or something like that.
Wow.
And not the first flight, but the first like direct flight. So it was kind of a resumption of normal relations, blah blah blah. Anyway, so and they didn't have TV. They had a group in the early 80s. They'd have a movie that everyone could watch, but it would be projected up on a common screen. You didn't have your own little screen or whatever. And the headphones were little tubes, like little pneumatic tubes. There'd be a speaker that would play the sound and project through the tubes. You stick them in the air, in your ears. So they'd hand out those tubes and you'd stick them in your ears and you could listen to music. And the music that they had put on was, among other things, Terror at 30,000 feet. So I was looking out the window, like 13-year-old Kyle was like, shit. Luckily, we went flying at night and with a stormer and things like that.
Oh, geez, yeah. So somebody pointed out that actually was a remake of the classic Twilight Zone episode, Terror at 10,000 feet, and it starred William Shatner. Now, I always thought this was pretty damn funny. John Lithgow in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, was in a sci-fi comedy, Third Rock from the Sun. Mm-hmm. And they always had to give these weekly reports to the big giant head, basically their leader, the big giant head. And finally, they had an episode or an arc of a few episodes where the big giant head wanted to come to Earth and check up on them. And the big giant head was played by William Shatner. And so they go, basically he comes in orbit around Earth and teleports on a plane. So they have to go to the airport and pick him up. And Lithgow and Shatner's characters see each other and he asks, "Oh, how was your flight, Miles?" "Oh, it was fine." And he says, did you see something out on the wing?" He's like, "I did." I thought that was pretty good. Vaughn had asked a question many minutes ago, and I wanted to give a chance. I know your time grows short, Kyle, but I wanted to answer this question before we wrapped up. Vaughn had asked, what is my thought on B1 as a teaching module for D&D? Now, I have often said that the best module that you can play as a dungeon master or as a player to learn how D&D works is B2, Keep on the Borderlands. We can make jokes and argue about their sensibilities as long as we want, but Wizards of the Coast included that as the 5e playtest. Like that was the module that they sent out with playtest packets, was a 5e statted Keep on the Borderlands. But B1 versus B2. Okay, so I feel like with the Keep, its environs, the surrounding wilderness encounters, wandering monsters, all that jazzmatazz, for the holistic experience of playing D&D, B2 is better. For dungeon design, B1 is an excellent tutorial for DMs because the entire second level of the Dungeons of Quasqueton are the DMs to populate. I think they are both excellent, but they fulfill very different roles. I think B1 is a good module in the overall. I think it is a great teaching module for designing a dungeon. I think B2 is great in the overall. And it does give you the breadth to design your own stuff with the Cave of the Unknown. And there's a suggestion you could put a forgotten dungeon underneath the keep itself. So that is that's my answer to your question, Vaughn. to stocking B1 then is definitely the way to go. I see your follow-up questions. So.
And as for your earlier comments about running a game, we've got Uncle Brett's put his hand up for it. Bill has as well. But as soon as we have 4 people who are willing to subject themselves to the conflict role-playing game, I'll run a game.
Excellent. Excellent. That's wonderful. Wastrel Wednesdays will be a gaming haven again.
Robert Phillips is always asking about games and that, but he never seems to put his hand up. We have to rope him in.
Wonderful, wonderful, excellent, excellent. So next week, we're going to be back at 9:00 Eastern, which I guess that's is that 11 o'clock your time, Kyle? 11 in the AM?
Oh, I think it's sometime in 2027 or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is, we'll start at the top of the hour rather than the bottom of the hour for both Kyle and I next week. Like I said, I had some stuff I had to get caught up on this week, and so yeah, we'll do that then. And again, I want to thank everyone who has
when the back squat stream is. I do actually have a channel for the gym.
If you want to link it, I'll just put it there.
There's very little on it. Where is it?
While Kyle finds that, yes, again, we are at 4,780 subscribers on the channel. Thank you all very much for your continued support of the Delver's Dungeon. Whether you subscribed, whether you've got a YouTube membership, Patreon, or you just watch and you say encouraging things. Thank you all so much for your outpouring of support. And
that's my lifting channel link, but as I said, there's very little there. It's just I did a little teaching series outlining training and that. So one of my skills as a coach or teacher is that I can make complicated concepts simple. I can explain them simply and well. There's no false modesty there. I've got that as a skill. I got it first from gaming, I think, and then from instructing people in the army. There's a particular method that all the lessons are presented in. In this lesson, you will be taught X. The reason you were taught X is so that you were, as individual soldiers, can do Y. This lesson will be presented in 3 parts, blah, blah, blah. And then each part you go and you ask a question. Do not raise your hand. I shall nominate. And then you point to whoever looks the most clueless so that they can get the answers. And then at the end of each bit, you go, are there any final questions or doubtful points on X? And so it's very systematic because you're teaching some of the dumbest people in society, soldiers. So there was that, and then there was all the English writing I've done and the years of coaching. I can make complicated shit simple and easy. The bad side of that is it means that there's not a lot of content to shovel out on the channel. I go, right, this is how you do it. Now go do it.
Are there no outrages in personal fitness? You can't do outrage.
Oh, yeah, there are. I mean, I could do rant. I did. There's a playlist there of Schnaps with Schuant, and I finished each one with a rant of the week about various stuff. But mostly nowadays, I just like me and other trainers talk in the background about stuff.
Well, I kid.
There's always, there's always dumb shit out there. It's part of the fitness, mainly because people want an easy way to do things when, really you've just got to keep showing up. You keep showing up and doing something, eat 3 cups of veggies, go for a walk every day, lift some weights or do some body weight work 2 or 3 times a week, and you'll be in decent, that'll make you in decent health. it won't get you 6-pack abs. It's not going to get you to run a 10-second 100 meters or whatever, but it'll put you in decent health. If you have a bunch of injuries or chronic illness, then you might need some extra help. If you are more ambitious than just being healthy, then you might need some extra help. But just for the basics, you don't need any. So, I mean, it's the same as role-playing stuff, really. You don't need a whole bunch of books and everything. And like I said, you don't need to spend $720 on... you might need to spend $720 on magic cards to get started. You don't need to spend $720 on role-playing game books to get started. There's free D&D out there after all. So
exactly. But anyway, so yeah, definitely check out Kyle's channel if you want a little fitness info. If you haven't already, please do click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications. It's super duper helpful to us around here. I will be back tomorrow night. We have a guest tomorrow night, so everyone wear your nice clothes, behave, no chewing gum, make sure your hair is combed. Bill T from Paint Minis Live is going to be here tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about Azarath, aka the Red Dragon Mini. It's complete. It's on my desk over there. I merely need to epoxy her to her stand, so she will stand up. I will probably put her over here and put a camera on her so you folks can see her. But until then, everyone. Oh, and of course, Friday, we've got First Edition Gamma World after some preamble ramble. And if anything pops up, any worthy news, we'll bring enough gum for all of us, Magnificent Devil. That's all I ask. If any worthy news comes up, of course, I'll be there with a video to share it. But until then, everyone, be good to each other. Kyle, thank you so much again for taking time out of your week to hang out with us. And anything you want to say in closing, Kyle?
The dice are always right, and don't forget to bring snacks.
The dice are always right. Don't forget to bring snacks. And the only thing that I would add to that is keep your eyes peeled for the owl bears. Peace. I love you all. Good night.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.